How's it going, everybody? So in this video, I'm going to be explaining how I reversed my own pretty severe psoriasis, and we're going to be talking about how you can also put your psoriasis into remission and basically completely resolve your psoriasis, no matter how severe it is. Okay? So also there have been hundreds and hundreds of people who have also resolved their psoriasis by doing pretty much the same exact thing that I did, okay? So I've talked about this multiple times, many times in extensive detail. I've wasted thousands and thousands of dollars on supplements and herbs and soaps and all sorts of things, probiotic supplements, trying to get to the bottom of my psoriasis. Because going to doctors really didn't help. I've had different creams and contraptions. I had doctors like change the diagnosis, and when I first went to a doctor for psoriasis, they told me that they suspected I had scabies or some kind of parasitical infection on my skin, and they gave me like an anti-parasite cream, and that really wasn't the case, and it was pretty bad. I like put that pretty much toxic cream all over my body, and I didn't even have a parasite to begin with. So that was really bad. Anyway, it got worse and worse and worse. It spun out of control until I finally figured out what was actually causing it. And the fix was completely free. I literally didn't have to pay any money at all to fix my psoriasis. So literally 2012 all the way up until about 2015, I suffered from severe psoriasis, and it just got worse and worse, and it was bad. Interestingly, it coincided with irritable bowel syndrome as well. So basically in 2014 to 2015, I was following complete nonsense charlatans, basically, who didn't know what they were talking about, trying to detox my body because I was under the impression I had some kind of infection or something, right? Because really, when you're trying to find the cause of your problems and you're suffering from what you think is an extremely severe issue, you'll fall into some really weird ideas. I was trying to detox myself by going vegan, basically. Really bad idea. But the interesting thing is I started to notice the more whole grains, beans, nuts, and seeds that I was eating, the worse and worse my skin got. And it got to the point where I was eating a starch-based vegan diet based on John McDougall's starch solution and Dr. Michael Greger, who's supposedly the pioneering evidence-based vegan guru in the field, right? And literally 75 to 80% of my diet was whole oatmeal, freaking steel cut oats, brown rice. Actually, it's more black rice, purple rice, red rice, quinoa, ancient grains, and I would just eat pounds and pounds of raw greens like freaking spinach, kale, etc. And I was just eating tons and tons of just fibrous vegetables, right? And fruits and stuff like that. And I was eating a lot of raw cacao and beans and all that stuff. So it was horrible. So I'm not even going to talk about the extraordinarily terrible digestive problems I was having when I was on that vegan diet. But my skin was terrible. My skin was all red and patchy, and you could see scratches all over my body. It was horrible. I had the worst skin during that time. And the girl I was kind of seeing at that time, well, anyway, I'm not going to talk about that. So basically, what I did was I was like, wait a second. I kind of came to my senses, and I noticed the more whole grains, beans, nuts, and seeds I was eating, the worse my skin was getting. So at the time, because I didn't have a working kind of medical knowledge that I have now, as I'm actually a practitioner. I'm a consultant. I'm a nutritionist now. So if you're interested in consultations, let me know through Zoom or Instagram video messenger or whatever you prefer. But basically, I couldn't comprehend how food in my digestive tract could be triggering psoriasis and skin problems on my skin. But I noticed, holy crap, like, for whatever reason, there's a correlation, right? So what did I do? Well, I went on the trendy, what is the word? Fad diet, as people call it. The Autoimmune Paleo diet. And where I was basically just eating, like, I went from eating vegan, because, like, literally I was brainwashed. I thought on paper the vegan diet is the healthiest diet ever. There's no way it could be causing my symptoms. I need grains. Like, how am I going to get my essential nutrition, right? Because that's what I was told by the USDA or whatever. So, and Michael Greger and all these other vegan people. So, I went on an autoimmune paleo diet. Literally, overnight, I completely removed all whole grains, all beans, and I went from 75% grain-based diet, grains, beans, nuts, and seeds, to all of a sudden 75% red meat, and then the rest was like bananas, fruits, and I was eating cooked cruciferous vegetables and spinach and kale at the time. So 75% grains, skin was terrible. Moved over to 75% red meat and then fruits and stuff, and all of a sudden my symptoms completely vanished. Now, I would occasionally still flare up just a tiny bit when I would consume nuts and seeds. Eventually, I just cut nuts and seeds out, and I also cut raw greens out of my diet because I noticed I wasn't digesting like the kale and the spinach and stuff, and I wasn't digesting the seeds. And the biggest red flag was when I noticed flax seeds in the toilet and beans in the toilet and whole grains in the toilet around like 6 months into being vegan. I was actually vegan for an entire year. It took me a long time to finally come to my senses. So anyway, my symptoms vanished, like legit completely vanished, okay? Within 2 days, my skin, all except for the scratches, because it was itchy, it would itch so bad sometimes and also be painful at the same time. It was like a terrible cycle. The scratches still kind of remained after 2 days, but the blemishes and the flakiness and all that stuff completely vanished. The scaly patches of psoriasis completely vanished in 2 days. After about a full week, it was almost like I never had psoriasis, like completely went away. Now, obviously, when you look on the internet, like forums and communities of people who are all suffering together, it is so sad. Like, these people are completely oblivious. They think that they have some genetic condition or whatever, and that they need to do all these creams or vitamin D or get more sunlight. And so, for me, it was absolutely a food intolerance. Conversely, I had irritable bowel syndrome, which was also completely caused by the same thing. So, fast forward now, that was 2015, it's now 2022. So I was suffering for like 3 years, 2012, 2015, and now it's been, what is it, like seven years later? Something like that. And completely symptom-free. But anytime I would start to try to add those foods back in, after a while, I would get the symptoms. It takes about 5 or 6 days of eating a large amount of grains to really just see my psoriasis full-fledged. So a lot of people might try removing whole grains for like a day and see no difference. But yeah, so anyway, what I realize now is, there's, these people who do like the all meat carnivore diet, or they're in like a paleo or a keto diet, for example, and they notice improvements in their eczema, in their psoriasis, and in their chronic skin conditions. And I noticed the more and more they go towards eating only meat, the better their symptoms get. And I've literally seen hundreds and hundreds of real random plain Jane grandmas and uncles in like Facebook groups now on some of these like communities that I'm a member of, who are just like, who are posting their results and they're baffled. They're like, holy shit, like I never post on groups like this, but bro, why is it that when I just eat nothing but red meat, all of my symptoms go away? And so there is a shit ton of people, like case reports of people like completely resolving their chronic skin conditions, just like myself. And the same thing goes for like irritable bowel syndrome and digestive problems. So here's what I learned, okay? So I've had clients that I've worked with now, a couple dozen maybe, not a lot, right? A couple dozen clients who had similar problems to myself. And here's the thing. It's not a magical like diet that you got to follow. Like I've made videos where I say, hey, carnivore diet's not magical, paleo's not magical. What it is for whatever reason, usually it's after a round of antibiotics, something like that, you are, for whatever reason, intolerant to a food you are eating, whether it's whole grains or beans or nuts or seeds or whatever. I mean, it could be nightshades, it could be tomatoes, it could be potatoes. Potatoes and tomatoes are generally nightshades, not yams and sweet potatoes, though. You probably have a food intolerance, and this is the underlying mechanism. This is the reason why these extreme diets, like carnivore diets, are so popular for people who are really sick. It's not because meat is magic or plants are poison. It's because people, for whatever reason, have allergies or intolerance to these foods that are not picked up by common allergy testing. And so when you go on an elimination diet and you find the food that's triggering your symptoms, you could completely resolve your symptoms just by removing a food. And so that's how I resolved my psoriasis. And I've had dozens of clients who I made them track their food religiously, keep a food journal. Using Chronometer, they would track their food. And we'd look at potential nutrient deficiencies and stuff like that. Things like vitamin A might potentially contribute, like a vitamin A deficiency. And in my clients too, I'm like, hey, you're eating a shit ton of chia seeds, and you notice the flare up immediately after that. Remove the chia seeds. Or they're eating, some of them have histamine intolerances. They're eating a lot of aged cheeses. And a lot of people don't know what histamine is that are watching this video, or histamine intolerance is. And so we remove the foods that are extremely, abnormally high in histamine, for example. And that's the only thing we change in their diet, and literally a lot of the symptoms just are resolved. So, and the fact is, there are, again, hundreds of people in these communities that have that problem as well. So let's get into the scientific, like the mechanism of action as to how this might be the case, okay? So again, I'm not saying that any of these foods I mentioned in this video are negative or unhealthy. I'm not saying like, oh, if you eat brown rice, you're going to die. I'm not saying whole grains are unhealthy. In fact, the scientific evidence suggests otherwise. People eat the most of these foods tend to be healthier, not because of these foods per se, but usually because of healthy user bias, which if you don't know what that is, you got to look it up, or you won't know what that means. And you won't be able to interpret these studies either. But the point is, they're not poison. Plants are not poison. So let's get into why some people might have problems with these foods and others might not. All right. So let's say you go through rounds of antibiotics, for example, okay? Because you had like a bad staph infection or something. So these antibiotics, a lot of people claim, completely kill off your bacteria, not only the staph infection, but also the bacteria in your gut. And so we know for sure that when you gut bacteria, we really don't know what gut bacteria is all responsible for. A lot of people assume it plays a role in your immune system and it plays a role in your mood and stuff. But what we do know is that certain gut bacteria is responsible for breaking down fibers and indigestible foods, like the outer shell of whole grains, for example, in your intestine. So humans don't actually digest plant foods themselves. And they don't have the same stomach power of like a horse or something. They don't have multiple stomachs. But in their intestine, generally these foods are fermented. That's what farting actually is. Farting is not from protein. There's a lot of stupid fucking people who think that you get protein farts. That doesn't fucking happen, okay? Unless you're a vegan and you want to talk about methionine and stuff like that. It doesn't happen. Protein's almost entirely digested by stomach acid and pepsin in the stomach and turn into chyme. It's turned into mush. It's turned into liquid. Now, plant foods, on the other hand, pass the stomach almost completely undigested, and then they're chopped up, chewed up form, and then they hit the intestine where they are fermented by bacteria. Now, the problem happens if you don't have the usual gut bacteria that you built up over your lifespan to digest those foods. And part of those plant digesting bacteria were passed on by your parents and what they ate. And unfortunately, probiotic supplements don't help. Prebiotic supplements don't help, except for if you're eating chicory root, all that's going to do is give you bacteria that's responsible for digesting chicory. Okay, focusing on foods that are high in prebiotic bacteria or whatever, prebiotics, they don't fucking help with general digestive health. They only help with digesting whatever foods those prebiotics were a part of, like bananas help digest bananas, etc. And so what happens is you're at a spot where you've got to slowly build up in like a tablespoon amount of that food over time. And if you overdo it even a little bit, it can cause crazy Crohn's disease symptoms. It can cause psoriasis. Whatever issue you have can be triggered by overdoing it on those foods. So part of it is not having the bacteria, right? And again, you have to literally eat the exact food you're trying to digest. You can't use probiotics. I spent way too much of my paychecks on that fucking on supplements that didn't work when it was just as easy as removing those foods, which I would way rather just remove the foods than like go on a wild goose chase leading to nowhere. All right, so then you have the gut lining can actually be broken down. So if you're not digesting your foods, because of gut bacteria, what can happen is over time, those foods irritate the gut lining. Think about undigested food. Like imagine the chewed up rice and stuff like that, and the fibers and stuff, literally scraping against the intestinal wall. And that can create openings, and think about like a really severe manifestation of this would be diverticulitis, where literally you get irritation of the little pouches in your intestine that get infected. Or you get things like colitis, where you start bleeding out of your ass. A lot of these fibers, if you eat them in excess, even if you have the gut bacteria, you could eat so much of these foods, especially if you're vegan, where you have so much of these undigested fibers that aren't fermented, causing farts and stuff like that, by the intestinal bacteria, that it overwhelms your intestinal digestive capacity to where they are kind of just irritating the gut lining and passing through undigested. Okay? Especially if you see undigested food in your intestine. And so what happens is the gut lining becomes permeable. Gut permeability is what this is known as. And undigested food particles, generally smaller peptides specifically, can literally pass through the gut lining and enter the circulation. Some people say the bloodstream, whatever. But it can go in places where it's not meant to be. And your body triggers an immune response. This is how autoimmunity is created, where it sees the foreign invader, it sees this undigested food as a foreign invader, as a threat, and this triggers the immune response. It triggers things like histamine, it triggers hives, it triggers allergic reactions that can manifest as eczema, it can manifest as psoriasis, it can manifest as Hashimoto's thyroiditis due to some of these immune molecules, killer T cells, lymphocytes, etc. And they'll go and they'll attack. They'll just kind of run rampant, and you can think of it almost like a systemic immune reaction, where it's trying to remove the undigested food particle, but instead it starts attacking various parts of your body. Even things like multiple sclerosis could potentially be the case, especially considering multiple sclerosis, which is a severe neurodegenerative disease where the immune system supposedly starts attacking the brain and whatnot. There's Dr. Terry Walls, who eliminated that with like a very strict elimination protocol, even though she claims it's other things like sulfur. She's on an elimination paleo diet, basically, and she resolved her symptoms. So a lot of autoimmune patients find complete relief of their symptoms when they go on elimination diets. Again, why else would thousands of people eat a like carnivore diet, like just red meat? That just sounds so fucking stupid because of how boring and plain the diet is. The reason is because these people have severe illnesses that are caused by food intolerances. And when you go on an all-meat diet, you remove all of these foods that rely on the intestinal lining to be healthy and gut bacteria to digest them. That's why carnivore diets work. And that's also why in my case, I didn't need a full carnivore diet. All I needed to do is remove the foods that I wasn't digesting properly. Whole grains, beans, nuts, and seeds. And then my symptoms completely went away. I was able to eat plants just fine. So dogmatic carnivores will say plants are poison. That's not the case. And so anyway, generally speaking, this is an abnormal immune reaction, okay? Because we didn't have antibiotic drugs. We didn't have even things like Tylenol can kind of like harm the stomach lining and harm the gut, the intestine. We didn't have, and I'm not going to begin to explain all of the industrial compounds that I wouldn't really say are things we should be fearful of. A lot of people just have an extreme fear of anything that's not organic, even though organic's not necessarily entirely better either. But we didn't have all these things that are possibly contributing to the breakdown of the intestinal lining. And so when, food particles seep through the gut lining, like undigested or whatever, or partially digested, smaller peptides that are broken down protein strands from plants, which, by the way, generally allergic reactions are a reaction to proteins as well, just so you know, obviously. The body is probably rarely, if ever, experienced partially digested or undigested food molecules going through the intestinal lining. It's not used to like dealing with that. And so, reacting using the immune response, our immune system is meant to fend off viral infections, bacterial infections, cancer cells, and things like that. And then, of course, depending on what part of the immune system, we're talking glutathione, superoxide dismutase, free radical damage, and things of that nature. Those are things it's meant to deal with. It's not used to dealing with food molecules that aren't supposed to be in the circulation. And so, with that being said, it can kind of make sense why we would have autoimmune conditions where our body abnormally attacks the thyroid gland for Hashimoto's and Graves' disease, or lupus and fibromyalgia, and the list goes on. And I've talked about countless instances, countless clients, friends, family members, where they just remove a certain food that they start to kind of correlate with their symptoms. Like even things like fibromyalgia, or chronic crippling depression, or even things like insomnia. And their symptoms completely go away. It's like a 9-day difference. Rheumatoid arthritis even. Okay? That's simple and it's free. But look at all these freaking charlatans out there that tell you need to detox, you need to buy their freaking supplements, probiotics, whatever, raw vegan diet, or even carnivore diet. Like, you don't need to do that. Or it's because you need to buy organic food. It's the pesticides, they'll say. And it's like, it could be absolutely as simple as just removing a food and going on an elimination diet. So, but they won't tell you that because they don't make money. They don't make money that way. They don't get clicks. They don't get a cult following like this one guy. I'm not going to mention his name. Medical Medium. I'll mention his name. Fucking damn it. So anyway, not to say that, whatever. Maybe his shit works, but like, maybe whatever. So, yeah. That's all for today. Hopefully this makes sense. And, work with a nutritionist like myself who has gone through this process and discovered how to heal without like making you buy a bunch of supplements and things, or even without you needing to come back to me. Usually, if you follow my advice and you're not like convinced that you're deathly still sick for the rest of your life, literally 1 or 2 consultations with someone who knows what they're doing, and then using a food log and stuff like that, and being willing to remove all the extra supplements that you don't need. And, because a lot of people, they're taking all these multivitamins and things that people have conned them into believing they need. A lot of times those actual supplements are the cause of your problems, I've found. Anyway, and really you won't need to come back. Like, you literally won't need to rely on me for your health anymore, because I'm not a cult leader like these other fucks. So anyway, damn it, getting all worked up over this. That's how to resolve psoriasis and autoimmune illness. So leave a question, comments down below. Let me know what you think. And if you are looking for consultations or things of that nature, Zoom calls, whatever, add me on Instagram, follow me on Instagram, and send me a message at WolfgangVL. Okay? Or sorry, at Coach Wolfgang VL. At Coach Wolfgang VL on Instagram. And hopefully you become healthy, and I'll talk to you all next time.